Have you ever woken up with a creeping feeling that something's off? That the life you're living, the choices you make, the way you think, even the things you want, might not actually be yours? It's unsettling, isn't it? Like you've been cast in a role you didn't audition for, reading lines someone else wrote. And the more you play that role, the more distant you feel from something real, something buried deep inside. You go through the motions, smile when expected, work hard, stay agreeable. But there's a quiet whisper beneath it all. Who am I really? That's where this journey begins, with a single, terrifying, liberating question. You're watching Mind See, where the mind learns to see. Most people never stop to ask that question. Or if they do, they quickly push it aside, distracted by deadlines, relationships, responsibilities. But deep down, there's this faint, persistent itch. Is this all there is? Carl Jung, one of the great minds of modern psychology, believed that this question, this desire to truly understand who we are, marks the real beginning of life. Not the moment we're born, not when we graduate, get married, or land our dream job. Life begins when we start the search for ourselves. But what does that actually mean? What does it mean to find yourself? For Jung, it wasn't just about self-awareness or journaling your feelings. It was something far more profound, a process he called individuation. A journey inward, a peeling away of layers that have been built over time, some by the world, some by your own defense mechanisms, to reveal the most authentic version of who you are. But here's the hard truth: most people never take that journey. Not because they can't, but because it's easier and safer to stay on the path laid out for us. Think about it. From the moment we're born, we're given a name, a role, a culture. We're told what's acceptable, what's good, what success looks like. We learn what earns praise and what brings shame. Over time, we adapt. We adjust. We start hiding certain parts of ourselves, the ones that don't fit. Maybe we were told we were too emotional, too weird, too quiet, too loud. So we tone ourselves down. We toughen up. We try to be who we're supposed to be. And slowly, without realizing it, we construct what Jung called the persona, the version of ourselves we present to the world. It's not fake. It's functional. It helps us fit in. But it's also incomplete. The problem: the more we identify with that mask, the more we lose sight of what's underneath it. And then there's the flip side, the shadow. If the persona is what we show the world, the shadow is what we hide. All the messy, uncomfortable, inconvenient parts of ourselves that we were taught to reject: our fears, impulses, emotions, desires. But also our unrealized strengths. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It doesn't politely step aside. Instead, it waits. It simmers beneath the surface, slipping into our thoughts, our reactions, our relationships, often without us noticing. Have you ever found yourself hating something in someone else? Feeling a strong emotional reaction to a trait or behavior? Arrogance, weakness, insecurity. Even though you can't quite explain why. Jung would say that's your shadow talking. We often project the parts of ourselves we can't face onto other people. The things we dislike most in others are usually things we're avoiding in ourselves. But here's where it gets interesting. The shadow isn't your enemy. In fact, Jung believed it holds the key to wholeness, to true psychological growth. See, healing doesn't come from ignoring your darkness. It comes from facing it, from listening to it, from integrating it. That means owning your envy, owning your fear, owning the part of you that wants to be seen, wants to be loved, wants to win. Even if you've been taught those wants are selfish or wrong. Because behind those raw, uncomfortable feelings is something powerful, something real. A part of you that's been buried, but never stopped speaking. This is the real beginning of individuation. Learning to recognize what's yours, what's been borrowed, and what's been hidden. Let's go back for a second. Think about your childhood. Were there times when you expressed yourself freely, only to be told to quiet down, calm down, grow up? Maybe you cried too easily, dreamed too big, questioned too much. Bit by bit, you learned which parts of you were acceptable and which ones weren't. You adjusted. You conformed. Not because you were weak, but because that's how we survive. But survival isn't the same as authenticity. And when we grow up living only through our persona, the curated version of ourselves, we eventually start to feel that something's missing. We might chase success approval relationships, but none of it satisfies that deep, aching sense of disconnect. Because it's not the world that's missing something, it's us. The forgotten parts. The buried parts. That's why Jung didn't believe the goal was to be better or more well-adjusted. The goal was to become whole. And to do that, we have to look inward, especially at the places we've avoided. You've probably heard the phrase, "What you resist persists." That's not just a motivational quote. It's psychology. The more you run from the parts of yourself you don't like, the more power they have over you. Anxiety, self-sabotage, people-pleasing. These aren't just random flaws. They're symptoms, clues, messages from the shadow. The question is, are you willing to listen? Most people aren't. Not because they're weak, but because it's scary. Looking at yourself, really looking, means facing your doubts, your contradictions, your wounds. And in a world that rewards masks, vulnerability feels like risk. But vulnerability is the door to truth. And if you're willing to walk through it, to question the roles you've been playing, to stop performing and start feeling, then you've already taken the first real step. You've broken the illusion that the mask is all there is, and that in itself is revolutionary. Once you start peeling back the layers, once you begin to see that your persona is just a surface mask, and that your shadow has been silently steering your life, things begin to shift. You notice patterns. You notice how you react to certain people or situations. You realize that the things you've always thought were just part of your personality might actually be old survival strategies, habits you formed, not because they were true to you, but because they kept you safe. And safety, while comforting, can also become a prison. Let's talk about one of the most common prisons we live, in the fear of rejection. So many people, maybe even you, move through life trying not to be too much. Too loud, too emotional, too ambitious, too sensitive. You keep things in check. You smooth the edges of your personality. You bite your tongue. Why? Because deep down, there's a voice that whispers, if I show this part of myself, they'll leave. They'll laugh. They won't love me. But where does that voice come from? Jung would say it's not just fear, it's a fragment of your shadow. It's a wounded part of your psyche that's been buried for so long you've forgotten when it first appeared. Maybe it came from childhood, from that one comment, that one moment when you were made to feel like you weren't enough, or maybe like you were too much. And because that moment hurt, you pushed it down. You said never again. And you built your life around avoiding that feeling. But here's the twist: you can't outrun your unconscious. Not really. You can stay busy. You can chase success. You can be liked by everyone around you. But if the roots of your choices are tangled in unexamined fear, you'll always feel like something is missing. That's why Jung didn't see fear as something to be eliminated. He saw it as a message, a signpost. He believed that the unconscious, the vast unseen part of your psyche, is always speaking to you. Not in words, but through emotions, dreams, reactions, patterns. And the more you try to ignore it, the louder it gets. Think about how often we distract ourselves. Phones work scrolling noise. It's constant. Silence feels unbearable, not because it's empty, but because it reveals things we're not ready to face. But that silence, that's where the unconscious lives. And if you're brave enough to sit with it, it will show you everything. Let's take an example. Say you find yourself constantly seeking approval. You work hard, go the extra mile, never rock the boat. On the surface, you're responsible, considerate, a team player. But underneath, maybe you're terrified of disappointing people. Maybe there's a belief buried deep inside, if I'm not useful, I'm not worthy. That belief didn't come out of nowhere. It was formed. It was learned. And until you face it, until you ask, where did this come from? Is this really mine? It will keep quietly controlling you. Jung believed that the path to self-knowledge always goes through the unconscious, but not to destroy it, to listen to it. Because in the things we fear the most, there's often a hidden strength. Your fear of rejection. It may be protecting a deeply compassionate heart. Your anger. It may be pointing to a boundary that's been crossed too many times. Your doubt. It might be your intuition trying to tell you something is off. When we stop seeing emotions as problems to fix and instead treat them as signals to decode, everything changes. But it takes courage. Real courage. Most people stop before they start. They feel the discomfort rising and instinctively turn away. They bury it, rationalize it, cover it with a positive quote or a productivity hack. But true growth isn't found in avoidance. It's found in confrontation. Not confrontation with others, but with yourself. And this is where individuation, Jung's central concept, becomes so powerful. Individuation isn't about becoming a better version of who society wants you to be. It's about becoming whole, integrating every part of yourself, the polished and the messy, the light and the shadow, into one unified being. It means looking at your jealousy and asking what it's teaching you about your values. It means feeling your sadness fully instead of numbing it away. It means holding your ambition and your insecurity in the same hand and not rejecting either. The parts of you you've been hiding, they are not the problem. They are the map. And Jung gave us a few tools for reading that map. One of the most powerful is dreams. He saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, stories from your inner world trying to guide you, warn you, nudge you forward. Not literal predictions, but symbolic ones. You're not just dreaming about a staircase or an X or a flood. You're dreaming about the emotions those images carry. Paying attention to dreams is one way to decode the language of your deeper self. Another tool, creative expression. Art, music, writing, movement. Not for an audience, not for perfection, but as a way to access what language can't always reach. Your unconscious speaks in images, in emotion, in sensation. Letting it speak without judgment is part of the healing. And maybe the most underrated tool of all, awareness. When you notice a strong reaction and pause before reacting, when you catch yourself falling into an old pattern and ask, why this again? When you stop and feel something instead of pushing it away, that's awareness. That's the beginning of real change. Because transformation doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't come from one big realization. It comes from 1,000 small choices to see yourself clearly and stay present with whatever you find. Here's what Jung understood better than most. People aren't suffering because they're broken. They suffer because they're disconnected from who they really are. And reconnecting even just a little changes everything. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. By now, you've seen that the journey to finding yourself isn't a straight line. It's not about snapping your fingers and suddenly becoming authentic. It's deeper, slower, sometimes uncomfortable, but it's also transformative. Because as you peel back the mask of the persona and integrate the whispers of the shadow, something else begins to stir, something ancient and universal. Carl Jung believed that within each of us are not just personal experiences, but patterns, deep, mythic patterns that shape how we see the world, how we act, and even what we desire. He called these archetypes. Archetypes are not invented. They're inherited. Shared blueprints passed down through generations living in what Jung called the collective unconscious, a layer of the psyche we all tap into, whether we realize it or not. You've seen these archetypes before. Not in textbooks, but in stories, in dreams, in films, in the roles we play in real life. The hero, the rebel, the lover, the wise old man, the wounded child, the shadowy villain. These aren't just characters, they're energies, psychological forces. They live in all of us, waiting to be recognized, and whether we're conscious of them or not, they shape our decisions, relationships, and even the way we talk to ourselves. Take the hero archetype, for example. This is the part of you that feels the urge to grow, to conquer fears, overcome hardship, pursue something meaningful. It's the voice that says, "There's more to me than this." But the hero never exists alone. The hero always has to face the shadow both externally and internally. That's why so many stories feature monsters' enemies or inner doubts. The battle isn't just about defeating an obstacle. It's about transformation. Have you ever wanted to change something in your life, but kept getting pulled back by fear, doubt, or self-sabotage? That's not failure. That's the archetypal battle within you, the hero trying to evolve the shadow, testing your strength. Jung didn't believe in eliminating the shadow to win. He believed in integrating it. Because within the shadow is your potential, your fire, your depth, your truth. There are other archetypes too, equally powerful. One of Jung's most fascinating ideas was the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energy that exists within each of us. According to Jung, the anima is the feminine aspect within a man. Intuition, creativity, receptivity, emotional depth. The animus is the masculine aspect within a woman, logic, assertiveness, drive, and structure. These aren't about gender. They're about balance. And when one is denied or rejected, we feel incomplete. A man who suppresses his anima may struggle to express vulnerability or connect emotionally. A woman who suppresses her animus may find it hard to assert herself or take control. But when these two energies are allowed to exist in harmony, when you embrace both your softness and your strength, you begin to feel whole. That's what individuation really is, a return to wholeness. Not just knowing yourself, but reclaiming the parts of you you lost, denied, or forgot. But there's one more layer to this journey, one final idea that changes everything. And it's this: the self you think you are may not be the full picture. Most people live under the illusion that their identity is fixed, that who they are is defined by their memories, their upbringing, their name, their job, their personality traits. But Jung and many mystics and philosophers believed something far more radical. That the self we cling to is only a tiny fragment of what we really are. That our identity, the I we talk about, is a temporary construct. A mask worn by something much deeper, much vaster. What if you're not just one fixed person moving through life, but a fluid, evolving consciousness? What if the voice in your head, the one that defines what you are and what you're not, is just one layer? This isn't about abandoning your identity. It's about expanding it. It's about realizing that you are not just your thoughts, not just your history, not even just your shadow. You are a field of awareness, constantly shifting, constantly evolving, with access to the collective wisdom of those who came before you, and the untapped possibilities still inside you. And that brings us to perhaps the most powerful concept Jung ever proposed. The self, not the ego self that says I am this and not that, but the totality of your being. The conscious and unconscious, the light and dark, the personal and the universal, the past and the potential. To touch the self is to experience what it feels like to live in alignment, not with an external expectation, but with your own inner truth. But to get there, you have to let go. Let go of the idea that you need to control everything. Let go of the need to always be certain. Let go of the labels that have boxed you in. Let go of the story that says you are not enough. This isn't an easy path. It requires unlearning, It requires sitting with discomfort. It requires stepping into the unknown over and over again. But in return, it offers something nothing else can: freedom. The freedom to speak without fear, to choose without guilt, to show up without pretending. The freedom to live from your wholeness, not as a role, not as a projection, but as yourself. So how do you begin? Jung offered a few final guideposts. Embrace the unknown. Growth doesn't happen where things are predictable. It happens in uncertainty, in the spaces that feel unfamiliar but true. Let go of rigid identity. You're more than your past, more than your personality. You are a living, breathing process, not a finished product. Listen to your inner world. Your dreams, instincts, and emotional reactions are not random. They're messages from the self. Pay attention. Trust the process. Self-discovery is not a destination. It's an unfolding, a lifelong dance between who you are, who you've been, and who you're becoming. And here's the most beautiful part of all. You were never actually lost. The self you've been searching for, the real you, has been here the entire time, waiting, beneath the layers, beneath the noise. Not something to become, but something to remember. So now you have a choice. You can go back to the familiar, the roles, the expectations, the performance. Or you can begin again, this time with your eyes open. Because as Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now, you know the way.